So not all big bad words are cuss words. I grew up in a Southern Baptist home here in Tucson, Arizona. I'm not anymore, sorry. But I did grow up very Southern Baptist. My family went to church on Sunday morning and Sunday night and Wednesday night. And my mother was the director of the nursery at the church and also worked at the church during the week as a secretary. And my father directed the children's church, where we would have children's worship while the adults were having their adult worship. And my family was a church family, a Southern Baptist church family. So with some religions, it's okay to cuss sometimes, maybe. But for Southern Baptist, or at least my version of Southern Baptist, it's not okay to say cuss words, and it's not okay to say substitute cuss words. Because, yeah, shit, no way. Shoot, also, no way. Because it's not necessarily the word that's bad, although those words are very bad. It's the attitude of cursing. And if you have the attitude of cursing, then you're doing something wrong and sinful, and God doesn't like it. So you can't say those words, any substitute curse words. So this is my home, and I realized, though, when I was a kid, that other words can be just as hurtful as curse words. Besides growing up and learning like that you're not supposed to curse, we spent, of course, as you know, all of our time at church. And so I learned at a very early age that service was very important. And that's kind of what my family did, and that's what people should do, because that's what Jesus did, and that's what makes you a good person, and that's what makes your community a good community. So that's what we did, and that kind of led to me being the girl at school who didn't curse, not even shoot, and also did lots of things for lots of people, including the teacher. And so I was a goody two-shoes. And this was a bad word. Like, you don't want to be the goody two-shoes. No one comes up to me and is like, hey, you're a goody two-shoes. Like, you're a goody two-shoes. Why don't you curse? Why do you help the teacher all the time? But of course my parents were really happy about this. They were also really surprised if this had been my upbringing and my persona, that at the dinner table one night when I was 8, like 3rd grade, I flipped off the entire dinner table. I did not learn that at church. I did not learn it at home. I learned it at school, at public school. There was a kid on my bus. We're all on the bus, getting ready to go home. And there's a kid on my bus that's having an argument with another kid who's on the playground still. And I don't know these kids because they're bad kids, and I'm a goody two-shoes. And the kid that's in the playground flips off the kid that's on the bus, and the whole bus starts going, ooh, and I start going, ooh, and I don't know why, except for that as a goody two-shoes, you try to kind of play it off sometimes, that you're not so much of a goody two-shoes, so you try to be like a little more savvy and aware. So, ooh, and then I get home at the dinner table and I'm like, I'm going to try this out, because what does a kid do with something that they don't understand except for experiment with it? So I flip off the family. And my parents tell me, you should never do that. And I don't understand why. Why? Well, this is what happened. This is where I saw it. I don't understand why it's not okay. And they tell me, well, that when you hold up your middle finger to someone, it's you calling them a 4-letter word. And the only 4-letter word that I knew was H-E-double hockey sticks. And I couldn't understand why you would call somebody hell. Because that's a place. And it's a bad place. And it doesn't really describe a person. And they say, no, not that kind of 4-letter word. And I'm like, well, what kind of 4-letter word? And they're not going to tell me. Like, I don't know these things, and they're not going to provide me this information. So what I learned from that experience was that I should just not do these things that I don't understand. And that was a big lesson that I got. Don't repeat things that you don't know the definitions of. So, and don't, obviously emotions included. If you don't know what it means, and you think it might be bad, you're not supposed to curse, you're not supposed to have the attitude of cursing, and you shouldn't repeat them if you don't know what they are. So, it seems to me, going through school, that it'd be really helpful. I'm not going to repeat the words, I'm still a goody two-shoes, but it'd be really, really helpful if I just knew what they were, so I could understand what was being said around me at school. And there's a tool for people like me now called the Urban Dictionary. I used it this week preparing for this story. I looked up the bird so that I could figure out, what would be a clever definition for explaining flipping off. And I found out that it's not just giving someone the middle finger, it's also a really complicated sexual act. I did not know that. So the Urban Dictionary is really helpful for people like me who didn't have mothers that taught them how to curse and taught them curse words. And it defines things for you, and not just like curse words. It could also give the definition of like cray-cray, someone who's very crazy. So slang. So if you're not hip on your slang, like you're not hip on your curse words, the Urban Dictionary is for you. But I didn't have it growing up. And so I'm trying to learn these words and kind of get their context. And in high school, I tried to kind of gain some street cred because I was still a goody two-shoes. And I was working on the school newspaper. And there were these girls on the school newspaper who were just infinitely cool. And they knew how to curse. And they did it well, and everyone was like impressed when they did. And they also were like probably the kind of people that could go to bars with fake IDs and no one would question them. Whereas I'd be like, of course it's a fake, I'm gonna leave them. Don't call my parents. So I admired them for how much street savvy they have, and also like how much they didn't care, because part of growing up in that culture was really caring about what other people thought of you and their opinion of your behavior. So these girls, Teresa was one of them, my friends, and Nicole, she was the editor-in-chief. She was just so cool. And she was the kind of person that if you didn't get your deadline done, she would come up and be like, you need to fucking get your deadline taken care of. And you did it. Because you knew if you didn't take care of it, something bad was gonna happen. You maybe didn't know what, but you knew it was gonna happen. So I became the editor-in-chief after Nicole graduated, and my friend Teresa's there, and the newspaper environment with a bunch of high schoolers working on deadlines that they're not really supervised for can be kind of stressful. And we had an argument about something, and I was like, I'm the editor-in-chief now, and Nicole was like cool, and she could cuss, and I need to assert my authority. And so I told Teresa, we got in a fight, and I say to her at in the layout room, just stop being such a bitch. And that was the reaction. Okay, note to self, don't use it in that way. Maybe a little too harsh. If I'm gonna assert my authority, maybe you need to cuss in a different way and not call somebody a bad word. So I learned then that really I was okay with cussing, but I needed to get okay with the proper way to do it. Maybe there's something to this cussing, and maybe it doesn't have to do with the attitude, or maybe it is the attitude really, because it's okay to cuss to express frustration, but maybe not to cuss to insult people. And I learned through this experience that I was really okay with it. And it was really okay with my goody two-shoes persona to cuss. And so I started experimenting with it, getting a little better at it. And it's fun. And I still have to look things up on Urban Dictionary. But I still enjoy cussing, even though I don't really know all the words. And I started to get a reputation of being a goody two-shoes with a foul mouth on occasion. And it gets even more interesting because with my training as a child of being like someone who serves your community, I became a teacher. And you don't cuss in front of your students, particularly if you don't want them to use that language in your classroom. But when there are a group of teachers behind closed doors, you can let it fly. And so I do. And I have now a reputation among my colleagues of being a really great teacher who has very high standards for her students and herself and her colleagues, but who isn't afraid to drop an F-bomb on occasion. And I'm proud to say that I have continued to be a goody two-shoes, but also earned kind of an award from my peers. Last Christmas, I was given a prize magnet from one of my colleagues that introduces me and my persona that I'm now comfortable with. It says, "Hi, my name is Jennifer. I teach like a champion and cuss like a sailor."